Hello and welcome to the Comic Crush. This is the Real Crush, our non-comic book movie podcast. There's got to be a better term for that, right, guys? I mean, there's got to be a better way I can describe this podcast. Basically, it's a podcast about films and film-related stuff that aren't related to comic book movies or comic books. It's only our second episode of this, so I hope you're tuning in for it. You can catch the first one, which is on the Fighting Spirit Film Festival from Birmingham earlier this year. But tonight we are here to talk about Jurassic World Dominion, which is the new Jurassic Park, perhaps the final Jurassic Park film, which is out now at cinemas, so you can go and see that. Joining me is a film fan, a writer, a comedian, and the Comic Crush's resident film reviewer, Mr. Rob Deb.
I like that.
What
I do like that. I have started to put that on stuff. Although resident implies that I'm somehow sort of waiting for the council bill, that I'm somehow squatting.
Well, we can find another way to describe. What would you prefer?
I'm happy with it. You know, there's always going to be some sort of bit. But thank you for inviting me to the genre pod.
Yes, there you go. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That where it may not be. It's not about the medium, but we know it's about fans of genre.
That's actually a good one, Rob. I think I might yonk that and
have that.
Obviously, I'll credit you in nearly every episode, if you like. I can say, as dubbed by Deb. Dubbed by Deb.
That sounds like a Fellini 80s horror. That's something, not Romero, like something far more surreal. But it's a pleasure to be here as ever.
It is great to have you on board. Guys, in case you've missed him, Rob's been doing some fantastic film reviews for the Comic Rush. He's currently sending us stuff from his time at Sundance London 2022. There's still a few more reviews to come from that, so do kind of head over and take a look at those in the Movie Bleed section. Rob's doing a great job, and I'm really proud and lucky to have him on board. You may remember Rob from our Batman podcast, the Batman podcast with Nikki and Liz, a few months
ago now.
Yeah, God.
It's weird how time goes, isn't it?
It is.
Sort of, I'm calling this the emergence, because everyone's we are. This is the world now, much like Jurassic World Dominion we'll touch on, but everyone's going at a slightly different pace of time.
Yeah, it does seem weird. It's like hurry up and wait, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
That kind of strange thing. I'm slowly getting back to the non-Marvel movies and stuff like that. But still enjoying more sitting at home. However, I did go to see this movie today, and went to a nice early show. Really enjoyed it. I didn't realise I was sitting in a subtitled screen though until about halfway through the movie, and I suddenly noticed, oh yeah, no wonder I'm following the dialogue so easily.
I think it has increased. I'm on a general level because, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to try and say that I don't have any particular hearing impairment. But you know what? I could have really done with that with The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I think that is a common complaint in films, and one thing that I've kind of found is that one of the reasons I like watching movies at home is I can just whack on the subtitles. Because although my hearing is fine, I do have a little trouble with modern movie sound mixes.
Yeah,
it's probably just me. It might be where I choose to sit, because there is kind of a sweet spot in most cinemas for the sound. But yeah, for some reason I wandered into a subtitle screen of this. The movie itself, we should probably talk about. Now you saw sort of more or less on release day, I think. You
pretty much. I saw it technically opening just after opening weekend. I saw it on the Monday, just after Sundance, basically the very next day.
Right.
I found it interesting. I saw it in an afternoon screening, and I do like to try and reflect audiences in my reviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, I know there's some debates on that with some reviewers, but for me, I think at the very least, if I don't like a film particularly, but I see a room go, yeah, I really like it, I like to reflect that. You know? Having said that, with Jurassic Park, what was very worrying was there was 3 of us. There was 3 of us.
So what did you see it like a Monday afternoon?
Monday afternoon after 3 o'clock, so sort of post school. So I don't know if not that would been reasonable, but it is the Monday, as it were, the cheap day, the day when all the concessions come in. You know,
sure, but I guess it's the evening ones they get busy on. I actually prefer seeing quieter screens. As you can tell, I'm a miserable old man. I've got my Richard Hammond beard, my Richard Attenborough style. I've got all this going on, growing it especially for this show. No, I haven't really. But you know, I'm a bit of a grumpy old sod, and I do prefer to be kind of left alone and just kind of, you know, chill with a movie.
Yeah. I'm a mixed bag. I'd like personal space in terms of I go for a corner. Let's face it, my sweet spot at Post 40, I frequently go in and they go, what seat would you like? And I'm going, and the screen's this side and this and that. And I just go, which seat is going to be easiest for me to go to the bathroom?
Yeah. It's all these things we have to take into account now.
I used to now. Early 40s, there was a debate of how I put that. But I'm already just looking at the aisles regardless.
Me too.
Clapham Picture House, there's a certain screen, P1, which is just so apt to me in terms of the seat that I want. But we were talking about sound and subtitles before.
Oh, Rob. Yes.
Good to be back.
I'm sure the audience are loving it. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey.
So, Jurassic World Dominion. So this is, by all accounts, the final Jurassic Park film. Did you come away feeling? Now, I think my feeling on the film is going to be different from yours.
Okay.
The reason I know this,
because you've read my review,
is because I've read your review.
Yeah.
So, were you happy about the fact that this is probably going to be the final Jurassic Park film?
All right. There's 2 things there. I hope it is. I really do. Right. Just before we did this recording, I've had a look at the box office. It won't be.
No.
It simply won't be. That's the easiest way to put it. I do feel if it wasn't, but you know, again, you know, this is a very hard time still for cinema. Right. Not just the emergence, but also it is playing against some gorgeous weather in the UK right now. These little things just add up. The prices. Yeah, but I don't think it will be the last one we see. But I do think they need to do something radical because this has gotten a bit. I call it Highlander syndrome or the Crow. Crow's had about 3 or 4 franchises out of it that just never really gelled. And I think if we go into it, there's where I want it to go if it does. But I suspect it will always be this contained anecdote to a larger world that you'll never get to see.
But do you not feel that? I mean, I had the same. I think I had the same problem with Endgame to a certain degree that you've had with this. In that, I was much more interested to see more of the post Thanos world.
The 5 years in between.
Yeah. See, I was, or you know, once you hit that 5-year mark. To see how people were living now, I was more interested in seeing that for a while than I was jumping straight into the time heist stuff. And and I felt the longer they could have stayed with that. So my feeling is, again, from your review, that you wanted more of this kind of post dinosaur release world where the dinosaurs were out in the wild.
Yeah, the Fallen Kingdom sort of promise.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting because I wouldn't have necessarily expected that from you. However, I kind of felt that we had enough of that. I mean, look, one thing you can't ignore with the movie is its size.
Yeah.
And indeed girth. It is a very long movie, 2 hours and 27 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're there for 2.5 hours, and I towards post a certain sequence that we'll get to in a bit.
Yeah, sure.
I began to feel that running time, and it's just like this is taking a long time. However, I still enjoyed being in that space and watching those characters and watching the dinosaurs. And one complaint, like I was talking to my girlfriend earlier today, and she was saying, "Oh, I've heard there aren't enough dinosaurs in it." And I was like, I don't know how anyone could possibly come away feeling that that's the case, because I felt it was fairly wall to wall.
I think there is a saturation of events going on. So
right. Okay, that's interesting.
That could create that effect, because as an analogy, one of my biggest problems was the first Transformers film is I see all this metal, but I could never figure out a shape. So you go, have you seen it?
Okay.
And I think that this film probably covers from that, because you don't have dinosaurs. You have dinosaurs and laser pens and an underground cave with its own artisanal coffee shop and locusts and genetic locusts and locusts on fire. So you do have a certain saturation of mayhem almost, as it was.
Right. Okay.
I can imagine people not seeing that the dinosaurs are almost in the backdrop of this mad apple.
Yeah. But do you not feel that if we were living in a world where dinosaurs had been out there for, because how many years ahead are we from Fallen Kingdom?
I think it's about it's only about 4 to 5 years.
But do you not feel that they would be kind of in the back at a certain point?
Well, I mean, they are. And deservedly so in terms of the real world. I mean, there's this montage that you see. They should lose their majesty, but for us watching, I just feel the premise that, as I think about it more and more, what I want is more of a HBO TV show than what would be a feature.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you want like flesh.
I want to see a Stegosaurus plowing the farm.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
interesting. Actually, that's interesting.
We touch on the sort of weaponized aspects of them since the last film, and there's also an element where the bad guys are just so fucking cool for school. They're just, we cut that for if you need to. Like,
no, that's fine.
They are just so cool for school. It's almost too iconic. So you have this hyper reality anyway. Are we living in a world now of where people are gonna augment themselves with dinosaur DNA?
Yeah, I mean, there is an element of so part of the plot line of the movie is that Biosyn, which is like the rival company to InGen from the first film, is kind of using dinosaur DNA to make medical advancements with, and they've got their kind of Steve Jobs-esque leader, Lewis Dodgen. Lewis Dodgen is actually a character in the first Jurassic Park film, played by a completely different actor. He's the guy that gives Dennis Nedry the shaving can.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, I didn't catch his name. As part of this, I've watched the first 2 films again today.
Right.
To touch on, and I didn't catch his name at all. But yes, gives him the shaving can, and
which makes a reappearance in this. One thing I did want to kind of touch on, the kind of chimes with what you were talking about, though, is that I very much felt when The Lost World came out. The first Jurassic Park sequel, I did get this sense that almost immediately that a lot of the wonder had vanished from the film, and I wonder if that's I do think that maybe that might be part of the problem with people's kind of, there might be a certain amount, as would happen in the real world, I guess, a certain amount of cynicism in people's views, and I'm not saying that cynicism is incorrect. I'm simply saying it's there.
I think it's a fair. I mean, having just what literally within the last 2 hours, just watched Lost World.
Yeah.
And I've watched it back to back with, Jurassic Park, and it just really reaffirmed for me watching Jurassic Park. I talked about briefly, is that it is the avatar of its time.
Sure. Although it doesn't feel as
well. It set that technical barrier much higher.
I do just have to apologise for any noise you can hear coming from my end. I think some of my neighbours are having a party or a get together.
Mine are as well. I'm sure.
Sorry about that.
No, but that's absolutely fine. I do think that to get back to the Lost World, though,
please.
The difference between the two films is you have the reason why I bring up the first one as well is it's almost very Alien versus Aliens.
Yeah, okay.
The level of jeopardy is so much.
That's a really good answer.
They are just people. There's very little in terms of weapon expert going out. It takes so long before a gun comes out in that one.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of sometimes to its credit because I don't always think the answer. And part of the problem of this, or one of the problems that this film touches on, really is do we go for extermination or do we go for integration? And it's kind of a weird thing because the answer for the film is to almost end up at the same place at the Lost World.
Well, this is why, because even at the end, and there's little minor dinosaurs like duck dinosaurs in the ponds. But again, the way that this is, you could argue, I mean, we're recording this after 2 years of a global event, which everyone has had to adapt to some degree.
Right.
And medical, technological norms have changed in 2 years, what would normally take about 10 or 15 out of necessity.
Yeah, definitely.
Given that and the variety in which this world is, anything from I'll just talk more personally, a relative got a text, a more senior relative got the text and he thought he had to pay £100 to get a COVID license. This is just an extra. If you look at what we've actually just done as a world, right, you can see that once you add an animal element, where the thing is more external than something we breathe, the variety is still going to be there. So whether or not we use it to weaponize, to harvest, to select, we all react, make money from, opportunity. It's all there in that first 15 minutes of the film.
Yeah,
I mean, you get to see whether or not someone's selling illegal pterodactyls in that. All right, mate, Cockney London, innit? Boy, that is for some reason Dick Van Dyke is not cancelable. I don't know why, but
well, I don't really think
I really don't think
his crimes were quite minimal. There are crimes against accents, not against
the crimes against accents. I think Gods of Egypt has got far more to say. But my point in terms of that, all right, mate, he's got some pterodactyls and that sort of cutting between the world. I want to see that. John Pertwee once said about Doctor Who, the scary thing isn't a Yeti on Mars. It's a scary thing is a Yeti in your bathroom. It's the Cybermen on Westminster that make you get to that uncanny valley. It's not whether or not they're on Mondas.
And I always feel that's the goal that people who make these sorts of movies are trying to reach.
Yeah,
is bring it home, bring it into home. And I think actually Fallen Kingdom did an element of that.
Oh,
so
definitely.
The last one before this.
Well, so much of it is domestic. It's in the mansion.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And
domestic if you're a super rich billionaire.
Yeah, but it is about money. It's about money and corporations. You could just as easily make this film. It actually, Fallen Kingdom always reminds me of The Stuff.
Oh, right. Okay. That's interesting.
Well, with the premise not really being about the stuff as a creature. It's also as much about the corporations. The hero is out there to steal the information.
Yeah.
And it's about people, by the end of it, are selling dodgy knockoffs of the stuff with derivatives. And like there's a black market of the pure stuff.
I mean, there could have been, I think, a bit more time to acclimatise to the post Fallen Kingdom world.
Yeah.
I felt from an information that you actually needed for the film to progress.
Yeah.
You had enough.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, really, what the film wants to take you back to is the premise of the original Jurassic Park and of the first Jurassic World movie, which is now we're going to give you an isolated space, and the dinosaurs are going to go batshit crazy within that space.
Yeah.
Or human beings are going to introduce an element that makes the dinosaurs go batshit crazy within that isolated space.
Yeah.
And all hell's going to break loose. And we're going to show you why this was always a bad idea. Which it does. And it was interesting that it felt the need to kind of restage certain elements of the original Jurassic Park film, the very first one, using a lot of the same characters because they're all returning. You know, Laura Dern, Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
I quite liked seeing those guys come back. I think Sam Neill was terrific. In particular, I really like Laura Dern. She's a terrific actor. Goldblum, very radically different performance in a way from what he was doing in the original movies, because I think what you got here is a man who's shook by what he's seen and shook by the fact that it's just like, oh yeah, the world is going to end now. And these guys are going to make it happen.
Yeah, but he's also, it's a weird one because when you look at, because I've just seen it so recently, he's already not happy at the beginning of Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah.
Right? His whole reason he's going is because his girlfriend's already gone. Right. He seems to have come to a place with what's really, admittedly, really only a cameo in Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
Where he's just giving the speech. But it's a very meditative speech. And his whole sort of attire and style is more like, oh, this is now he's become a grown man, as it were, much more centered is the image that comes in Fallen Kingdom. Yet here we see this almost regression. I mean, he knew that this would happen. Why is he on that island in the first place? Why has he taken the gig? I just feel there's such a step back with so many characters in this.
Yeah, I mean, he does kind of say himself, it's the money. You know, he wanted the money to support the many children that he's got. But although they must all be grown now, as Ellie's children.
And again, I mentioned, you know, where is Kelly? I just
it would have been nice.
I saw a 14-year-old use amazing gymnastic skills to kick a velociraptor out a window. That would have helped.
Yeah. Something along those lines. We do get... Yeah. It would have been nice to see Tim and Lex, maybe, and to see Kelly, and to see even like Vince Vaughn and Julianne Moore maybe pop back for a couple of scenes. You know.
Yeah, there's just I mean, or just some real... I mean, this is why I didn't like... And the biggest retcon, ironically, isn't to me about the originals, although I loved the fact in Jurassic Park 3 that they hadn't hooked up and that she'd married someone else and had kids with someone else. To me, that was progression. All right?
Absolutely, yeah. Whereas he hadn't progressed. He hadn't kind of
progressed,
stayed.
and that, but that's fine because that was more of a snapshot of like not everyone just goes fights a Tyrannosaurus Rex and then settles down with a pick and mix.
Yeah,
you know, that's kind of the realities of life, as much as a movie can allude to without distracting from the fact you're not there for that. You're there for a dinosaur. they just went, oh yeah, we're not married anymore, and the kids are grown. So anyway, smoochy, and I'm like,
well, I feel that a lot of that was in keeping with one of the general themes of the movie for me, which was it's a bunch of people realizing, particularly men in the film, really realizing, we've made mistakes, and we've now reached a point where we've got to kind of change. Even to a certain extent, Dodson was kind of realizing, oh yeah, I've cocked this up, and you see his kind of procrastination and unwillingness to accept that he's cocked things up really start to affect him throughout the end of the film, and I quite liked that. However, there maybe wasn't enough of it. I actually, was a big fan of Campbell Scott's performance in the film, because I think he managed to play both sides well, the kind of Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg-esque figure, and the big bad.
Well, he did, but he is Hammond. I mean, Hammond's not smart.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
All. And Hammond is very manipulative. How he gets, you've already hired his girlfriend, and now you hire him. Now you go to Malcolm. Hammond was playing games all along. And sorry, but this is why I want to talk about the retcon that offends me.
Yeah, go on.
Actually offends me. Is that she's no longer a clone.
Yeah, okay. Look, for one thing, I didn't see what the character really brought to. Not that the actor was bad, terrific actor.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with that.
And by and of herself, well written, well acted, all of that. Oh, sorry, I knocked you out temporarily.
Okay, that's all right. Phantom zone. That's fine.
So yeah, but more to do with the fact I never really saw what that character brought to that movie.
She was to me, she was almost a holdover. Well, there's two things. One, they're now a nuclear family unit, which gets into my wick, but not as much. Of like, Claire's gone from power shoulders and quite businesswoman who's conflicted to just soccer mum throughout this entire film. Not without my daughter. Are you me? The thing is, as a thematic, as being a clone, human cloning, she got to decide whether or not these animals were let into the world or not. At the end of Fallen Kingdom, there was a huge element there. What is life? That could have been explored in this.
Yeah.
And that's why I bring in the permutations. If we're going off the information superhit highway, both of us have recently had our immune systems genetically altered in order to go back to our lives or the life that we want. Some people, maybe Triceratops horns might make that happen. Yeah. She is a clone. She's stating, when she releases those animals, Fallen Kingdom, the right to life.
Right.
And that's a big thing. She's got the buttons, and she's what, 9?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's created Dominion. And now you're going, actually, it's not all bad. We all lied. You had a mum.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that. I've got to be honest. I didn't really think about that.
With like, actually, it was Palpatine. I love the idea that her parents were no one. Just a couple of spicers who just sold her off, right? And she's good with the Force. No, she's Palpatine's granddaughter. Oh, you ruined it. Anyway. Different film. Different film, same point.
I think.
Different film, same point, basically.
Okay, that's interesting. It's not something I gave a lot of thought to, but only because I felt that she was a kind of slightly more disposable character from that.
Yeah, she's the annoying thing you had to go and rescue.
Yeah, almost. I just couldn't see the point of it. I think it was an element of that film, of Fallen Kingdom, that reared its head too late in the day.
Yeah,
structurally, to really have an impact.
I think that's You know what?
And that is a problem. Whereas here, it's kind of threaded through a lot more. I like the fact that both of them are completely ineffectual as parents. I did like that. I mean, also it's that sequence, that early sequence with them out in Nevada, where you get, for me, one of the best moments in the film. Speaking of the post Fallen Kingdom world, which is the Brontosaurus being led out of the logging area because it's in the way.
That's exactly.
Now that I felt they recaptured some of the majesty.
Yeah.
And you also have that thing of the young girl educating the older people about dinosaurs, even though it's only touched on very, very briefly. I mean, for me, like largely the whole film feels like a setup. Like the bookends of the film feel like a setup for that middle sequence. And I feel like that central middle sequence set in Malta was the one they came up with first.
Yeah.
And then to a certain degree, there may have been an element, and there's all good writers involved here. It may have been an element of, we've got this really great idea for this big long sequence.
Yeah.
Now we just need the rest of the film to put it in. And you know, I don't know how much of that is rewrites, how much of that is studio enforced kind of.
Yeah.
But that Malta sequence,
it's great,
was staggering. Like, I just genuinely felt that they really had it in that.
Well, that's the film I wanted to see over 2 hours, basically.
Yeah, I mean that was a really great kind of action sequence. I think you got a lot of character there. You got Wanda Sykes, is it the new kind of the airline pilot, or the plane pilot who's kind of ferrying illegal dinosaur cargo all around the world. She was amazing.
Yeah,
I really liked her. It was good to see actually at the beginning of the film, Justice Smith returns along with Daniela Pineda, I think her name is, who had starred in Cowboy Bebop and in Fallen Kingdom. I really liked her performance in Fallen Kingdom, and it was great to see her back in this, albeit briefly. Again, like, you could have done with more of those characters threaded throughout the film for a bit longer. I know Justice Smith makes a reappearance.
Well, I mean, that was the whole sort of Han Solo cantina element.
Totally.
Where, know, I mean, the film is not shy of being what it is. Almost too knowing, like, leave the hat. You know, it's they're paleontologists in love. Why
do you know, in my head canon though, my head canon, briefly in that moment, I really wanted him to say that it was a hat that she had brought for him.
Oh God!
Sort of years before.
Yeah,
I am a sentimentalist. I'll completely.
Of course, there were other women, Mariam. They weren't you. I don't know why I did Burgess Marius then, but you know. They weren't you.
But like I think there was a lot of great sequences in this.
I think there was, but I think that's the crux of it. There was great sequences. Sadly, with a Jurassic Park film, there's a lot that I was scared of. I've seen this, and also without a real new thread or new take, which is where I thought it could go. We're back on the island. I don't want to go back to the island. I don't want to go back to the island.
That's fair enough. Yeah, it should be a wider, watching dinosaurs running around New York like Q the Winged Serpent would have been.
I think that was an element of that sort of promise with a pterodactyl sort of perching in like Seattle on the Space Needle.
Yeah.
But like this didn't go into that world of how does this black market work? You know, you've got this new character in there who could take you into sort of Mandalorian territory for this world and the grey market of it. But we're on an island again. Chris Pratt just plays his magic hands. I mean, the fact is he was doing that to every dinosaur and they believed him. None of them were trained. None of them were trained. None of them were raised by him. I mean,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
privilege to the next level. Saurians are conditioned for your.
I quite liked. I mean, as much as she felt
T-Rex, Paul.
I've got to say, as much as she felt like a complete affectation from another movie and a complete kind of holdover, Dickon Lackman, I think her name is who's the very kind of beautiful sort of Mata Hari type figure who's shipping the dinosaurs for Dodgson. She was wonderful, and I really liked her.
It's well, I mean, you know what? You know, she has she's just got a straight physical presence, poise.
Yeah.
And there is a lot in it. Ultimately, this is a pulp movie.
Yeah.
It is people can bat and ball about politics and demographics to a certain degree, but ultimately this narrative is a pulp narrative.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's completely
it's a pulp narrative. People are playing archetypes. They may not be the people you normally see in those archetypes, which is great, but they are those archetypes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a very iconic way to play it. But this is why I refer to, and I suppose it's more because we've already had 2 films of magic hands.
Yeah.
That that's not really gonna, you know, that's why that's going to seem dull, and you need new images, you need new interpretations, new types of people fighting dinosaurs, because the dinosaur is elemental. The character reaction is individual.
It is the natural disaster of the film. You know what I mean? Like it is kind of, and it's interesting that the natural disaster is actually kind of the man-made disaster in this, the locusts, which were almost a holdover from, you know, they felt like they could have come out of you know, Journey to the Center of the Earth,
absolutely,
or any of those Harryhausen-esque movies. That felt like the most pulp element to me.
Absolutely, but it didn't. I think it did. Its strength was not. Was just leaning into that. I think if it tried to be, I think ironically the things which I find it's unconventional and it's just an Amblin film. At the end of the day, Amblin is kind of like when people go, "What's this?" There are some elements which will be unreviewable, such as it's a Marvel movie, or Hammer horror, or you know, it's a crime film. Even to this day, Warner Brothers have probably got the most dedicated people in terms of making its crime films.
Yeah, and you know, it's James Bond. It's a formula.
Yeah, and it's done very crafted. I just felt that it could have taken it to other worlds.
And maybe you're right. Yeah. I mean, you really interested me in that thing about, you know, there's probably a TV series in this.
I think do it a lot better. Well, I mean, it's something in the Batman thing Nikki mentioned, which is that sometimes when you go and see a movie, I'm paraphrasing what she said. You know, you don't necessarily want to see the civilians. You've paid to see heroes.
Yeah.
And I think that's very true. That is the nature of the big screen. But in terms of a story element with this world now, I think, I mean, how big can you make a Tyrannosaurus Rex and then, you've genetic? Because once you start playing with what a dinosaur actually is, which they have now, it's like, well, I'm just literally watching made up creatures. Well, so you've lost also a part of what a Jurassic Park is.
I feel part of the film was about regression in a way, because
I think there was regression.
No, but stay with me. You know, we go backwards towards when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but even within that, we go backwards to genetically untouched dinosaurs.
Yeah.
We go backwards to when insects were the size of your arm. We go backwards also in our kind of moral grasp of the world, but in a good way, because people like is it Wu, Henry Wu, like the doctor?
He wants to go back. Yeah, he said it was a prototype, the genetically enhanced Velociraptor, and then he didn't realize they were going to mass market it, which is, again, I mean, you mentioned about a lot of it is about the characters anyway. A lot of men and their regrets. Now, he's a classic example in this, but he is the person who actually has the key to fixing this locust problem.
Definitely.
But I would say this is the problem for me with Jurassic Park is, though, yes, we do look back, because if you do not learn, those who do not learn from the mistakes of the past are condemned to repeat them in the future. Right?
Totally.
So all we're seeing are people who see what happened before and go, no, but if I build it underground, that'll be fine. Yes, they're all men, but like really that, and also it is the nature always beats technology. That is a great element of the Jurassic film, because everyone's got whatever the latest tech is.
Life finds a way.
That is what it's the key point of why the first one. That's why I use the aliens analogy for the first two films, is because everyone goes, oh no, but I've got anti teeth armor. Yeah. And he goes, he'll just grow bigger teeth. What did you think was going to happen?
And also, in that few years, no one seems to have developed any kind of personnel armor that would have, protected you for a minute or two from raptor teeth,
just, and I'm sure that there's probably a manufacturer of dinosaur PPE to stop yourself getting blinded.
But also, I do
spit.
I do wonder then if it moves into sort of the RoboCop territory and you begin to lose that human element for people. I mean, for me, ultimately, Rob, I thought it was an entertaining movie, a bit overlong. I thought it was beautifully photographed. There were some shots that were just absolutely gorgeous, and some of those were or seemingly non-vis effects moments. Some of the scenery, like in the Dolomites and things like that. And for me, the central message of the film very much felt like the world is going to end, and it might end while you're on it, and therefore you better find someone to love. And which is
I feel it was. I think that's a fair thing. I will say, as a positive, this is one of the tamer, I feel, in relation to, we've had a lot of Bond and Batmans.
Yeah.
So I think this is the film that you really could, as a 12A, this is the film that you could take the younger branch of the 7-11 age bracket in the family to, compared to a lot of Marvel films, I would say.
Yeah. Well, especially we're going to be back talking about
exactly.
A Marvel film that definitely.
I would happily take my niece, who's 9, to go and see this before I took her to see Multiverse of Madness, for example.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that Ewan McGregor recently said about Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's a character he's had quite an up and down, tumultuous relationship with.
Yeah, sure.
Is that for me and you, who are proper old guard, we forget. It's very easy for us to forget that for the 12-year-old, that The Phantom Menace was their first Star Wars movie.
Completely, yeah.
And they totally enjoyed it. And I would have probably smirked at that. But I also think of the fact that it's now, I think it's almost 10 years since The Force Awoken.
Yeah, we must be close. 2016.
2016. Oh, sorry, 2016. Okay.
I think, yeah.
All right. No, that's fine then.
No, a bit earlier than that, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it is 2012. I think 2016 may have been the
Christ, it flies by.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why I think of that is because my nephew was 5 at the time. And no, I'll just say it because it just makes the point of how these things can have an impact. He turned to me in the summer just before that came out. So yeah, I think it was actually something like 2005, and he said, "Why do all the good guys have blue eyes?" and that is what the norm was.
Yeah.
And I was taken aback by that, and I looked at the only one in Marvel who's got brown eyes, incidentally, at that point in terms of the classic pantheon is Peter Parker. And within like months, weeks, if not months of that question, right, there's John Boyega standing there with a lightsaber. And his Star Wars, simply because of his age, 5'6", is The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Now, to bring it back to this, why I bring it up with this and what I saw here, that there is a point where you don't have to have seen much. I'd quite happily take an 8-year-old and this be their first Jurassic Park film. Because they don't care about backstory. We went and our first film in Star Wars was Episode 4. I mean, come on. So
very true.
I will say that as a positive, because it is contemporary. The effects are that much more. If anything, having just watched the first film, like I say, in a way, there's less sense of jeopardy because they've got it all breaks and it doesn't help them. But compared to just running around in your shorts, Timmy, you know not to climb up electrical fences to get a frisbee. That was one of the things that you were fundamentally taught as a child by the television. Yeah. Even if it looks dead, it might be alive. You were taught that as a child.
Yes.
Yeah. Jurassic Park. Nah, that wasn't a dinosaur that did it.
You got to encourage them to have adventures, Rob.
Right, yeah. But I would say, I mean, it's not. I think it's it was entertaining. I would say for me, it was just a bit too by the numbers for a franchise that's gone on as long as it has.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Your thoughts on it have given me new things to think about in regards to the film, which I think I'll certainly kind of be looking at the next time I watch it. Inevitably, I will go out and purchase it. Ultimately, when it comes out for the home entertainment kind of thing, because looking back, I've got the other. And looking back on those films, there isn't one that I haven't enjoyed to enough of a degree where it's like I don't want to kind of. Whereas I think with the last two, you talk about Force Awakens, the last two Star Wars movies, very shaky. But it's a generational thing as well. It changes.
I think it is. This trilogy has been very much a trilogy. People could jump in Jurassic World, and I would say that this second half of the whole franchise did bring in life because Jurassic Park 3, out of the now 6 films, to me is the nadir. It's the absolute nadir.
Yeah, although I've got a lot more respect for it watching it again in the last few years, I have to say, and there are a lot more elements about it I like. Ultimately, I think they work the best in terms of these big kind of movies because they're about things that have actually existed.
Yeah.
And we know scientifically, you have that whole thing with Alan Grant in the film where science tells the truth. And it's
walking with dinosaurs wouldn't exist without them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I say the impact, the seismic media impact of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Like what Avatar did in terms of on a technical level, that just made every film 3D regardless for years.
Yeah.
I think Jurassic Park did in terms of narrative, history, and technical levels, as well as actually just really holding up as a domestic story of a family in peril, effectively.
Completely. Like, ultimately, I think it's an end. Is it a fitting end? We'll see. Will it be an end? Even no. I don't know. Perhaps the TV show is the way to go. Rob, it's been great having you on board for this. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me. Rob will be back on. With any luck, this will be going out on Monday. Rob will be back on Wednesday with me to talk about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness via the magic of. There you go. Guys, thanks so much for watching. You can catch me at the Comic Crush or at Comic Crush Paul. Rob, you can find him at Rob Deb on Twitter. If you want to follow him on Insta, at Rob K. Deb. He's also available on Facebook. Do check out his work on the Comic Crush. Do check out his comedy stuff. Rob is a terrific writer and performer, and one of my very good friends, and I'm very pleased to have him as such.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
It's certainly been a rock in the last few months, I have to say. We're going, guys. Goodbye.
All right. Bye.
Catch you next time on The Crush. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.